I mean, if religion is so great, why is it? I mean, if religion is so great, why has it started so many wars? Why does it build huge churches but fails to feed the poor? Tell single moms God doesn't love them if they've ever had a divorce, but in the Old Testament, God actually calls religious people whores. Religion might preach grace, but another thing they practice.
Hello, everybody. Sarge here. Thanks for coming. Tonight's special night. We're talking about anti-theism, and I have with me a few panelists. Gentlemen, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Which one goes first?
The first one that says something like that. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm Demolished Doctrine, or Richard Madsen. My general gist of my channel, Demolished Doctrine by the same name, is I believe that religious stories are describing the end of all superstitions and the ideas of magic being transformed into reality by execution of the prophecies.
Okay, thanks, man.
Hey, my name is Jefferson Spatchcock. I've got a channel on YouTube where I talk religious history, mostly history, New Testament, and general atheism topics, plus some politics, mostly left wing.
Yeah, I'm the Raging Atheist. I make videos and do a lot of live streams. I like conversations. I'm anti-Abrahamic, former anti-theist. Still maybe an anti-theist. I'm back and forth on it, so this will be an interesting discussion.
So you're saying there's a chance?
Yeah, I'm more of an anti-Abrahamic. I like saying that better. But yeah, we'll talk about it.
Fair enough. Well, I, as you know, am Sarge. I am a theist. I am an Abrahamic theist. I am a Catholic YouTuber, but everybody knows that already. So please don't hold that against me. So
Jim is Opus Dei. Sorry.
yeah, right. So before we get into this, though, I think it's kind of important to define our definitions because I often find that most people mean very different things when they discuss theism, religion, atheism, agnosticism, so on and so forth. So why don't we go ahead? Rage, you said that you are anti-Abrahamic. Can you just give us a quick rundown of what religions you would classify as Abrahamic and why you're against them?
All right. Well, you have the three. You have Christianity, Judaism, and Islam. Of those three major branches, I know the least amount of about Judaism, so I don't tend to focus on that. But when it comes to like Christianity and Islam, I find the doctrines to be harmful, especially the more fundamental you get. Um, that's why I started to call myself anti-Abrahamic because I stand more in opposition to Abrahamics. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm against every person that I meet that follows an Abrahamic tradition or doctrine, but it does depend on the doctrines that they follow, that they consider to be important. More progressive Christians of any ilk, whether they be Catholic or Protestant, I can usually not have much issues with them, but it's when we get to some of the things that I find to be harmful, then I'm very anti that. And just the definition of anti-theism itself, opposition to belief in the existence of a god or gods. That's why I think I'm back and forth, because I do think by that definition I am anti-theist, but I'm not an anti-theist by, I think, the definition that Christians have of it. So I'm kind of interested in hearing what you and my friend Richard especially think their definitions of the word.
So then, just to make sure that I understand what you're saying correctly, would it be fair to say then that you believe that, I guess, a fundamentalist or traditionalist view or adherence to the three major religions, Christianity, Islam, and Judaism, but like strict adherence to those and their precepts, has a
Yeah.
negative impact on society in general?
Yeah. Well, and they have aspects of them that I just fight against on a political spectrum. So, yeah, I think that's it exactly. The more fundamental you get, the more I'm going to have a problem with you. And it's what I see in society, and it's also based upon the reactions that I had from the Christians and the world around me. I don't know many Muslims in real life, so I can't say that I had a specific reaction from Islam or Judaism as well. But from the Christians around me, the reaction I got from them when I came out as an atheist really propelled me into some really what I call dark anti-theism. But yeah, my problems now, I've calmed down a lot. Tend to be more with people that practice very fundamental doctrines, doctrines like quiverful doctrine, or doctrines like if they believe in reprobate doctrine, doctrines that dehumanize other peoples, gay people being abominations, things like that. If you look at the Islamic world, especially the theocracies that of Islamic nations, the atrocities that happen, the civil rights injustices that happens in those countries. I stand against those politically, but I also stand against those morally.
Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. I hope that helps not only the panel, but the audience kind of understand your point of view a little better. Moving north along my screen, let's ask Jefferson Spatchcock. What to just clarify your point of view on the subject for us, and just let us know, like, how would you define religion versus like anti-theism, atheism, etc.
Oh, well, I mean, religion's, I mean, pretty broad in general. I think any religious tradition or faith tradition, I wouldn't say that I'm against in general. Although I don't take most of them, or even probably even all of them, at face value. I wouldn't say that I take them literally. In terms of atheism, I mean, I kind of accept the one of the two standards for atheism. Either it's an absence of faith, or it's a rejection of the part of the proposition, which is, do gods exist, yes or no, and the person is taking the negative. That I think is really different from anti-theism, because you can be an anti-theist and actually not be an atheist. I'm not an anti-theist in the fact that I am an atheist in the sense that I reject most religious beliefs as being literally true. But I'm not an anti-theist in the sense that I think that it's inherently a bad idea or necessarily bad. I think if you get into some of like the works of like Christopher Hitchens, where he not only rejects the idea of the faith, but he also is in very strong opposition to the notions that are present in specifically Christianity and Islam and Judaism, where he believes that they foster a sense of civility and sort of a stifling of imagination, a stifling of humanity. I'm not totally convinced of that argument. I think he does a good job of being persuasive about it. And I enjoyed reading that when I was early into my deconversion phase. But no, I wouldn't consider myself an anti-theist, and mostly because I think that theistic ideas are probably unavoidable for human imagination, and I think they actually can be helpful. But we can get into that later.
Okay, well, the audience is saying that you are still sounding pretty muted, like you're in a drum or pretty far away from your mic.
Yeah, I think there's actually a short in the headset that I'm using. I've checked I don't have any settings other than volume on it. It is a very simple headset. It sounded great before, and now it just sounds like junk. So I'm starting to wonder if maybe when moving it, it was an older headset, and I'm thinking that something's gone wrong.
Fair enough. So rest assured, guys, we are tracking Jeff's audio problems, and we are trying to mitigate them as much as possible. So moving along, last but definitely not least, Richard, why don't you give us your point of view on the whole subject?
Okay, so I'm just going to start at the default position of agnosticism, not making a claim of knowledge. And I think that's the human default position. We learn otherwise along our travels. Then you have, of course, the left and right hands of those sides of that, where a person makes a claim that they either do or do not believe that a God is possible. And I think it's not defined enough to say theist. Actually, I think that I think we need to work on that socially, on the definition of the word theist. But atheist, making not the claim that there is some God, not necessarily denying there is no gods, which what I understand anti-theism to be, which is a position that I held for 30 years, that there can be no gods. Now that's a positive claim, and it's a Gnostic claim. It's claiming knowledge that there can be no gods. And after I became a theist and started studying logic a little bit, I realized that that is an impossible position to hold, because it's a knowledge claim about things you can't possibly know.
Yeah, I guess for my part, I would probably differentiate between anti-theism and atheism, whether it be a hard Gnostic atheism or an agnostic atheism. What by agnostic meaning the claim is there are no gods, and like an agnostic atheism would be there's most likely no gods, um, or probably no gods. I get hung up on the language of uncertainty a lot. But I would differentiate between that and the idea that one ought not believe in gods, and I will do everything I can to eradicate the belief in gods. Does that make sense?
so far.
Yeah.
Yep.
So would you guys consider yourself as falling into that camp? I think there ought not be belief in gods, and we should eradicate belief in gods.
I definitely, well, I don't want to say definitely. In an ideal world, I would say for me, eradicating God belief would be yay, hell yeah. I'm an atheist. I just went about how I think that, I find it to be harmful in society, at least most God belief. But as a realist, I don't want to eradicate God belief. I want to find some way to coexist together. I think that there needs to be definite reformations in all in all religion, Christianity, or even the three majors of Abrahamic Christianity. Islam especially needs some reformation, and Judaism. I think Christianity and Judaism has had that, but no, I don't want to I don't want to tell people what they can and can't believe. What I want to see from religion is stopping the othering of other people. If you're not a Christian, then you're evil, or if you're not a Muslim, then you're evil, or that's what I really fight against.
That actually touches on kind of an important point, or an important point that I did want to discuss at some point tonight, and that is just you said that you don't want to tell people what to believe, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But would it be fair to say that we're making recommendations to people on what they should believe?
Oh, sure. Yeah, and I know that there are some atheists, or probably most atheists, that do speak to an audience, right? Like, or to the audience, hoping to change minds. I've never really been one of those. I don't really care about that. I've always said, at least on YouTube, my thing is to make entertaining content for atheists, and it's kind of evolved into being. I want to have serious conversations with all the different worldviews. So for me, it's never really about changing the minds of others, I think it might be for a lot of atheists.
I'm
I don't want to
gonna,
be the only one speaking.
yeah, I was gonna leave an awkward pause here for the other two gentlemen to chime in.
No, yeah, I don't think that. I mean, I think that the idea is to recommend one's point of view and try to communicate as much as possible. I do care what other people think, otherwise I wouldn't engage with their ideas. There's plenty of YouTubers that I talk to whose most of their viewpoints I find and across the spectrum to be repellent. That does matter to me because unless they're just making it up, for entertainment on the internet, if they're going out in the world, these are people that are voting. These are people that are also communicating their ideas to people. So when we get that exchange going between different people, because we want them to kind of see our point of view and maybe get them to at least build a bridge, to where we are. They don't have to come over, but at least kind of reconcile the fact that we've got some, there's some give and take available there.
Yeah, I agree. No, go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know that like specifically like somebody like again like a Hitchens, because when he came out, or even Sam Harris or Dawkins, when they came out, their attitudes were strong and they had strong personalities. So when they started talking about a lot of this stuff, and with Harris it was the evils of fundamentalist Islam. With Hitchens it was that, but it was also a lot about how just the belief in mostly never having God was terrible and led to all these things. And he was very outspoken about what he felt were the moral failings of Catholic figures, like such as Mother Teresa, and naturally the sex scandal involving pedophile priests in the Catholic Church. He was very outspoken about that. There's attitudes about this, so there's a lot of anti-religious sentiment, but in terms of like an anti-theistic sentiment, like I said before, theoretically, you could be someone who wasn't an atheist, who's actually a theist, is kind of convinced that there might be a God, but not only does not like the idea of it, hates it as a concept, but thinks it might be a real thing and hates it if it is real too. So, I think there's that sort of almost violent opposition against it. One of the things that's interesting about it is that for people that are critical of it, they'll often call it militant atheism. But it's not really, anti-theism isn't really militant atheism. Anti-theism takes a different track than atheism, especially in all those things. There's a very fluid definition to them. But atheism is a rejection of a lot of religious claims, whereas anti-theism is, I think, a more pointed and direct, not a rejection, but a stated opposition to it. Like, you shouldn't believe this because it's bad, it's harmful, and I'm going to do everything in my power to stop it, and to stop you if you're trying to spread it.
Well, in a case such as that, definitionally, you could call me an anti-theist, couldn't you? Because I'm for the dissolution of the idea of something being supernatural, for the idea that there is magic, for the idea of repetitive acts based in religiosity where the practitioner doesn't really understand what thing they're performing or why. So other than the extremely informed, and I think that's rare in religious communities, I'd say I'm against almost all of it. As far as Christopher Hitchens and his ilk are concerned, I think Christopher Hitchens made some very humane pleas, but I think that they were fallacious if we're not separating the practitioner from the practice. That is to say, someone can claim to fully understand their religious story. That doesn't mean that they necessarily do, and it doesn't necessarily mean that they're performing what it's asking of them very well at all. I think a majority even of Catholicism would disagree with the statement that it's good to suffer as Christ suffered to the practitioner of the religion.
Oh, I'll push back on that. It's actually kind of a central Catholic idea that suffering perfects our salvation and that it's good for the soul.
Well, I suppose I was referring just to Mother Teresa and the quote and how it was used at the time, or at least how it was recited to me, that it was talking about children suffering.
Yeah, Mother Teresa, a lot of what she wrote is difficult to understand because there's a lot of context behind it, and there are a lot of people who tend to view her as a moral monster because they're lacking that context for a lot of her letters and journals.
Fair enough. But I think you would agree with me that we shouldn't have ideas in modern society that promote things like supernatural experiences, and I have a real problem with people claiming that God or even that any of the Judaic religions in the text themselves are claiming something supernatural. I just don't believe that's true.
But do you think it's harmful?
Well, I think all magic is harmful.
Okay.
It leads us away from understanding our actual natural environment, and can either stunt growth and investigation, or in some cases absolutely bring it to a halt.
I think I take a slightly different track with that, because I think that while I don't accept a lot of tenets of different religions, reject most of them. There's some aspects of certain religions that I like, but in terms of the ones that are theistic, I would reject. I'm not convinced that there's really a God, and but in terms of the idea of being anti-theist, at least as far if we tighten the definition to be, we reject the idea, we're we violently opposed to this concept of a deity. That I don't know is entirely all that great. I think that what ends up forming out of that, I think that's mostly an extension of our own imaginations, and I think that a lot of that does help us. I think I for one, I'm not convinced that there actually is a God, but I think the notion of a God, the concept of a God that mankind has wrestled with since since our beginnings, and has informed us to the point where I think we'll end up building one. I mean, it informs the way we pursue our technology in a lot of ways. We sort of tend to follow that kind of strange dream, and that may take us far. It may end up leading to our destruction. Who knows? But I don't think there's anything that can happen in terms of at least that spark, that notion came with that. And I think as far as people using their imaginations, I don't think that can stop. I think where things get dangerous is when the imagination stops and we start to formulate a system where we believe we have certainty about what this thing is. We start to give it parameters, and then we start to imagine that it's providing us rules. And usually those rules are the rules that men want other men to follow, and they're just claiming that this deity wants it done.
The last half of what you said there, Jefferson, is perfectly comporting with what the Bible says we would do and should not.
What's that? Build our own God?
Try to develop defined ideas and follow the path of those defined ideas, and that sort of business is risky.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I think you definitely blew the minds of some Christians in the side chat, maybe, Richard. I would agree. I do find supernatural or magic to be harmful. And I run into a lot of really fundamental Christians, and they think that belief in this very supernatural being that's always watching them. For me, it has been a wreck of a YouTube career, honestly, because I think it intrinsically puts into people this idea that there's this supernatural spiritual war going around them all the time, and that they're a part of that fight. So it goes to that dehumanizing of other people that aren't within the religion. And I know what Richard is talking about, because he sees God in a very different way, but he's still a Christian. He still believes in Jesus Christ. So I don't think that Christians probably understand where you're coming from with that.
It might be actually a good idea for us to give our definitions of the word God.
Yeah, could be.
Yeah, that would be helpful. Who wants to start?
I could start with one. I mean, I don't think that it's particularly well defined, and I probably lean more towards being an atheist in that sense, because it's sort of like I don't. It's not just a rejection of the claim of God; it's a kind of rejection of it. It's so poorly defined that I don't know that there's anything there to reject. If somebody says, well, okay, if I ask them, do you believe in a God? Oh, well, I don't know. What is it? Well, it's an omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent, omnipresent being that's responsible for the creation of the universe and everything within it. Oh, no, because what started as an unknown variable that was basically not falsifiable has now been given parameters that also make it unfalsifiable. So none of those concepts really work for me, and they're not convincing at all. If someone asks me specifically, do you believe in the God of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the one that led the Israelites out of Egypt and did all these other kinds of things and formed a covenant with people and created the earth in 6 days and rested on the seventh? No, just because it's a level, it raises a level of incredulity that rivals the movie Roadhouse. It's completely implausible. So yeah, I mean, other than to divine God, in the sense that God is just whatever people think is responsible for, I think, what they can't explain. It's an answer to questions that they otherwise wouldn't have answers to. How did we get here? Where did all this stuff come from? That kind of thing. And if it's that God, it's just a God with the gaps. And so in that case, it's just an appeal to ignorance. So in those three areas, I find myself not convinced.
Yeah, I would agree with Jay. I don't think that there really is a very good definition of God. I think that there are a lot of different definitions of God. If you talk to a seriously fundamental Christian, you've got 3 different gods that are the same God that exist out of time, space, and matter, which I don't think is possible. If you talk to pagans, then they're discombobulated minds floating through the universe that can impact the lives of men. You go talk to some Native Americans, and it's your ancestors looking over you with the great ancestor Wonkin Tonka. I think the definition of God is based on the eye of the beholder and how they perceive the world. My definition of a God is dictator, because when I was a Christian, my God was a dictator. So I think that's my definition of it.
As for myself, I have a very peculiar disclaimer. Richard's claims about the Bible are not normal claims about the Bible and are not broadly accepted by Christians. What I see described in the Bible and other stories is that the word God and Yahweh, first of all, should be separated. The word God is a set of ideals that living beings can participate in. Then Yahweh would be the first human being in the universe anywhere and ever. Sometimes otherwise called Adam in one of the recollections, and not the other recollection. That would be a different Adam or us, where that being believes in that set of ideals and participates in them and exercises them on reality, which is how God interacts with physicality, though God has no physicality. Just like we exercise our morals and ideals on our environment. So that there's no actual supernatural something or magical something going on at all. It's just the difference between ideals in a living being that they exercise and the ideals themselves.
I think that's kind of interesting because there was a writer that I used to read quite a bit. I disagree with a lot of some of the stuff, but he's very well read. His name is Nicholas Nassim Taleb. He wrote a book called The Black Swan after the financial crash. And he rejects atheism because he doesn't believe that anyone who adheres to atheism can explain the concept of the sacred versus the profane. And it's one of these sort of chicken and the egg things kind of thing. And his explanation didn't really convince me. But what I think is interesting is that I think essentially what you said was, in that sense, that this being lives up to and fulfills everything within the whatever would be qualified or defined as the sacred. Like it does everything that's good, right?
That's not right, yeah.
Okay. So I think that's kind of interesting. So so in the sense that in Taleb's case, that we can't have a distinction between the sacred and the profane without a God that makes it so. But in your case, it's like no, there is a sacred and a profane, and the being that you're referring to is one that can perfectly fulfill all the requirements and actually perform all the activities and actions that would fit under the definition of the sacred. So those things exist without him.
As we said back in the Army, hooah.
Okay. And so, Jim, you as a Catholic, you have the church's definition. What is though? You should probably say it because we don't get a lot of Catholics in the community.
Catholicism falls. It falls into the realm of classical theism, which would be in the tradition of thinkers like St. Thomas Aquinas, Aristotle, Duns Scotus, Augustine, people like that. I did find a good summary of how I would probably define God, and that is it comes from one of the more interesting publications I occasionally read called Strange Notions, and it defines God as absolutely simple, immaterial, and indivisible.
Okay.
And then that kind of some of the other attributes kind of fall into there as well. But I would definitely hold to the notion of divine simplicity. For example, over theistic personalism that you would find in more modern thinkers like Plantinga, Craig.
Did everyone define God? I lost track.
I think we hit everybody, unless anyone else.
Well,
That's it, right?
we do have a couple new additions if they want to jump in.
Peace and respect, gentlemen.
I don't know if you've seen any of my old videos, but
Well, I have a definition for God. If I should go,
Yeah.
so a God is a term of vertical honor. It's literally just a title. The difference between, for example, Zeus the entity and Zeus the god is nothing. There's no difference. Right? It's just an imaginary crown you put on something's head. The same thing goes for Yahweh. Yahweh the entity and Yahweh the god are exactly the same.
Okay.
The
Now-
only thing required for something to be a god is that people claim that it's a god and they believe the claim.
I totally agree with that. I've always thought, I've told Christians several times throughout my life, God is just a title. It's a title you apply to this being you think exists.
I think actually I was, if you don't mind me, and I'm not trying to sharpshoot you, but I think I was trying to look for more of a, I don't know, I'm gonna have to wait on that one. Sorry.
I think I would agree. I don't disagree with Serb's definition. I guess I would say that like I would deny the existence or at least the worthship of other gods. Like it is entirely conceivable that an entity that is known as Zeus, for example, might exist. But I do not believe that Zeus is deserving of the same sort of attention that we would give the classical theist god. What? Because I guess like you can take it, just take it for granted that whenever I say God, I am referring to Jehovah, Yahweh, the Christian God, the Judeo-Christian God. Um, the same God that is referred to in there is only one God, and Muhammad is his prophet, hero of Israel. The Lord is God, the Lord is one, and I believe in God, the Father Almighty, creator of heaven and earth, so on and so forth. Right? They all, yeah. That's how. That's my definition.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone would just suspect you to want to worship Zeus, right? Just like we wouldn't suspect a Hindu to worship Yahweh, right? It's out of their wheelhouse.
Yeah, I guess I only brought that up because I wanted to make a distinction between acknowledging that other gods exist, but like especially in the way that you mentioned, and the notion that just because I acknowledge that another god exists, I also worship or I'm a devotee of said god. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah,
I would push back a little bit on Serb's definition. I think it works in some avenues, but I think, at least specifically for Christians, whether they're apologists, with an education, or they're enthusiast apologists on YouTube, or whether they're just, kind of enthusiastic early believers and just, they take what they get from their churches. The Christian God has become in a lot of ways a remedy against the kind of philosophical vertigo that comes from nihilism, or some sense of annihilation that they feel as they get older. I've had these conversations with Christians where if I tell them that I'm an atheist, I've actually heard some of them panic. They get a panic in their voice because if there isn't a God to prop everything up, to make everything, thus and so, then we either slip into a world of total relativism at best, or complete nihilism at worst, and they can't cope with that. So for them, whether they're aware of it or not, they've sort of surrendered to a philosophical position of they require the metaphysical foundation of a divine being and divine command to feel secure.
I'm really not sure why that would help them.
I think it provides a sense of security because otherwise, it's almost like I said, it's a sort of philosophical vertigo. If relativism isn't something that they can cope with, and nihilism, generally the idea that nothing matters. I have heard from believers who have said, well, if I didn't believe in God, if I lost my faith, I'd shoot anybody that looked at me sideways. And one guy actually did tell me that. He said, I would kill people if God wasn't holding me back. And I'm like, well,
Then you have David Wood who tried.
Right.
I've been told that as well by several Christians.
And I told him, I'm like, well, you just keep going every Sunday, and maybe consider going Sunday evenings and Wednesdays too. Instead, stay away from my house. So, like, hey, if you think that that's what's holding you back, but in a lot of cases, any other conversations, I could tell right away that for him it was like that. Like, no. You need God. God determines what's right and wrong, and He's the one who's going to figure out who's been naughty and who's been nice. The naughty ones are going to get theirs in the end, and the good ones get to live with God at the nice house. All the bad kids chill at the fiery lake with Satan and his horde. And for them, that is a source of great comfort. I think it's a despicable, disgusting, depraved story, especially if you start trying to think about a being with of pure goodness and almost some Christians describe it as a limitless mercy. He doesn't have limitless mercy. There are naughty people that believers need to see punished, and they are waiting for their God to do that.
Those people are sick.
I agree. I don't know that they're sick. I think that they have been wrapped up in a story that gives them a sense of security, that provides them a definitive black and white sense of justice, and they don't have to think about the scarier aspects of having to really, really take a dig at relativism or nihilism or any of these other kinds of things that they think are going to be there because this metaphysical foundation slips away.
I mean, I can agree with that. I can understand that to the point that they say, I want so-and-so to burn in hell. Right. That's no longer about their personal comfort. That's about the persecution of others.
Right, but as long as they think that they're right,
whether it can be personally justified or not, I just feel like that is sickness. That is a mental illness of some kind.
Yeah, I mean, there could be to that, but I think that if they follow a certain kind of dogma to its extreme, it might take a couple jags to get there, but once they get there, that they've reached that conclusion, they're convinced that they're in the right. I mean, I don't know if anybody can identify this particular person, but there's a YouTube apologist that believes that when God comes back, he will be recruited into his army, and he will fight in the Lord's armies against Satan and his minions and the unbelievers and the reprobate, and they will get to kill them all and send them to hell, and he will get to sit and laugh as they burn.
Well, yeah, and you also have doctrines like the Quiverful doctrine, where their core belief is fucking an army of God into existence. So they go they go out. They literally you can find Steven Anderson talking about it, to where God has given woman a natural contraceptive, and that is, like, you can't have a baby, or you can't get pregnant for a certain amount of time after you have a child. So you just keep having sex with her until God gives her another child, and you have 15, 20 children, and you raise them to be either pop icons, musicians, singers, or to infiltrate political establishments.
It seems to me like
badass.
To me, it's the Beagle paradigm of the Christian upbringing. In the way that you have beagles that produce large litters because you send them out to go after rabbits and stuff. The beagles are reckless. You need lots of them because usually you lose a couple of them. It's something stupid. One gets killed by a raccoon, one jumps into a wood chipper just out of curiosity. So this notion of the Quiverful thing just seems kind of like that. Like, okay, we're going to have 12 kids. 6 of them are going to become pop pop stars, but 4 of them are going to end up in rehab. So, but 2 of them could make it. 2 of them might do okay.
I would like to just say that I could probably throw my beagle into a wood chipper and he'd probably come out a little scraped up on the way out.
Well, yeah, it became like the Duger family. I'm sure everybody knows of them. They are a quiverful family. They have followed the doctrines. It was first promoted by a guy named Gothard, Bill Gothard. I call him Bill Got Hard because he was later found for sexual molestation and sexual harassment. I think he's still going to court for all of those things. So I mean, yeah, I mean it's all based on biblical doctrine. It's right there in the Bible. It tells you to have a quiver full of children and to basically raise an army of God.
I actually find
Yeah,
myself.
It's that passage that says that they're a blessing. It's like an arrow in your quiver kind of thing, and they take that literally.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can see reading it that way, but it's hard to read it that way.
I have an interesting kind of I'm not going to say an interesting kind of relationship with Quiverful, but I am kind of similar. With, like, I've got 6 kids, full disclosure, but it's not necessarily because we're trying to raise an army of God. It's that Catholics, especially from Thomistic metaphysic, have some very specific beliefs about artificial contraception and the morality of its use.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I find it highly different. Catholicism and Quiverful, I think, are 2 different things. And it's more about not using contraception, and hey, maybe you just go deep.
Go big or go home, man.
Balls deep? Was that where your balls deep?
Yeah. The kids are prettier if you go deep.
I mean, I think my kids are pretty cute.
No, I'm not gonna say it. Not gonna do it. Don't do it, Jay. Don't say it.
So I kind of want to, because I don't want to run too late, and I don't want to run up onto Knox stream kicking off in a little over an hour. By the way, if you are watching this, I will encourage you to drift on over that way. You're running an open topic night tonight, right?
Yeah. John put out the call for Christians to come and challenge us on why we're atheists, but we'll see if any actually show up.
So
I
that
see how
actually,
John is. He didn't send me a link, asshole.
I know one that'll show up.
I'll challenge you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and it is an open room, so anybody can come in. Feel free to.
that's actually kind of an interesting thing, right? Because like, I take a lot of flack from other Christians because I am chummy with the atheists. Um,
Yeah, what's wrong with you?
but to my mind, I never
We're friends.
So, well, it kind of touches on like this stream subject and why I wanted to talk about this tonight, right? Because as I said earlier, there is a difference between disagreeing with what I believe and the reasons for why I believe it. I think Saka Count summed it up the best. Is that the only difference between you and me, he said to me once, is that we have different metaphysical assumptions about the world, and we have arrived at different conclusions on a couple different propositions. But beyond that, we both like hockey, we both like D&D, we both have a bunch of shared interests. So I don't see why we need to be enemies.
I guess it depends on what hockey teams you guys root for.
He's a Caps fan, and I'm a Red Wings fan.
Right there. Yeah, definitely.
I would actually, because I was intrigued by that, because you included that question early to us, and it was sort of like, why give somebody like yourself, or is it okay to mention other YouTubers on here by name?
Yeah.
I know some people. Okay, because you had mentioned like, hey, why this one guy or you and a few others? Why take it easy on them and not somebody like a Jesus Lord or a Gavin? And I think that the biggest difference, other than like, because it's not, I mean, if you get into some religious ideas, I think you would have more in common with them theologically than not, maybe. The difference, I think, is Christian chauvinism. Like the idea, the attitude and the statements that come out of some of these guys is that Christianity is better. Anyone that challenges us is of the devil. They're weak. They're stupid. They don't deserve to be listened to. We will entertain a conversation with them only to serve as an example of how stupid and depraved and silly they are, as an example to our young, so that they will know to grow up and become Christian, chauvinists. And by the way, chauvinism, I'm using that in the sense of the original term, which is, an almost blind prejudice support of your own group and belief that it's superior to any other group. You can be a Christian chauvinist, you can be a male chauvinist, you can be, whatever. And I think that's the attitude that a lot of these guys are bringing to these conversations. And it's often, they're wearing this on their sleeve. It's usually apparent from their attitude from the jump.
Wait, Jefferson, is there something wrong with all that? Just kidding.
Yeah, I think it would be fair to say that
is going to get a lot longer.
they're probably as anti-atheist as they accuse some people of being anti-theist. I know Gavin in general likes to describe many of his favorite nemeses as or hate theists, right?
Hate theists.
Hate theists. Yeah.
But like, I don't necessarily see them. I don't necessarily see anybody here as being a hate theist unless I've misread a lot of you. I think you are probably in opposition to certain types of theism. I mean, I actively dislike evangelical fundamentalist Protestantism, for example. I think I would classify myself as an anti-evangelical Protestant, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
Gavin's my buddy. My buddy. My buddy.
Oh, yeah. To piggyback off of what Jefferson was saying, they do wear that. A lot of them do wear that chauvinist attitude on their sleeves, and I think it damages them. I don't think that Christians should run away or demonize atheists. I think that they should believe in their faith and defend it, and not run away from the hard conversations that you might have with an atheist, or just demonize us as atheist or whatever you're going to demonize us as. When it comes to like being hate mongers, I think that there are definitely videos in my video log that a Christian could look at them and say, hey, he's demonizing us. But I think, Sarge, you just nailed it on the head. I'm not demonizing Christianity. I'm demonizing doctrines within it. So I'm demonizing purity culture, or I'm demonizing the NIFB and what they say about genocide of gay people, things like that. I do definitely demonize the Old Testament. I kind of stay away from the New Testament. So I can see it, but at the same time, I think that if you actually have a conversation with me, then I think that you can see that I'm actually interested in having an honest conversation and hearing what you have to say, give you my input, and let's go from there.
Hey, Knock, I got good news for you. Not only is there no physical contact in the champagne room, there's also no NIFB practice in heaven.
Well, I mean, according to them, they're basically the only ones making it, and you're all not Christians, so.
Right.
Yeah. Oh, even I'm in the same boat with that one.
Oh yeah, they hate Catholics. I mean, I've told you this before, Sarge. I mean, they hate Catholics more than they hate us. Like, I mean,
yeah.
We're just atheists. You are something different. You're heretics.
I think
Jim is a heretic. Jim is a heretic.
Yeah, I always I mispronounce everything. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Fine.
That's all good.
Yeah, I think the other thing too is, like, if they're damaging their own sales pitch in a way, I have a tendency to think that a lot of religions are self-eradicating, especially God's. And maybe I'm wrong about this. If anybody thinks otherwise, hit me up on email and challenge me. But if you look at the number of religions that have just fallen away and slipped into the memory hole of civilization versus the ones that have remained, and I think in a lot of cases, Christianity, Judaism, Islam, a lot of the big ones have been able to cling to a lot of broader cultural movements by adapting over time. And the Christianity that we have today owes a lot of itself and its traditions to a Greco-Roman and Hellenist past that allowed it to adapt from Judaism into something else. And it's since adapted away from that. I mean, first century Christian church, probably, totally different than American fundamental, evangelical Protestantism.
That's a whole new conversation, Jeff. Come on, man. We just promised Rage he could go.
Well, he is exactly right. I actually knew, I'm not going to say no anymore, a Hellenist. You go talk to a Hellenist, there's some interesting history there that I never would have been exposed to until I talked to a Hellenist. So what Jefferson is saying, that there is actual history behind it.
Oh, there's definitely history behind it, but I maintain that every society, when it got to a certain level of cooperation, had 3 minutes to sit down at a campfire once a day. Were
Yeah.
given their religion in a societally acceptable way, and it was the truth from the start, which is why there's comparative religion today. So it's not exactly borrowing if it's all from one source.
Until somebody disagreed and they ended up on the fire.
Well, yeah, and I mean, if it's all from one,
Just
well,
kidding, just kidding.
No,
and,
practitioners have done horrible things to each other. I concede. I concede.
well, if it's all from one source, then the first source would have been animism. Those were the first gods human beings ever had, and I don't see anybody going around worshiping animals anymore, or at least hardly anybody.
I call my theory cryptic prophetic animism. You know that, right?
No, I didn't know that. That's maybe
would-
that'll be part of our next conversation.
Cool.
I think that might be true in the sense that I think that, yeah, I mean, we probably did worship animism, but I think the one that informs most of like sort of the bigger questions of like earlier religions, especially like the underpinnings of Christianity and Judaism, the animism, the spirit animal that we were looking to was human. We would do stuff and kind of wonder, the first guy to build a mud house was like, hey, this is my house and I built it. I wonder who built this planet I'm on, this ground that I'm standing on. Obviously, we didn't know what a planet was. And then you just start extrapolating out from that. Well, it must have been a bigger dude with bigger tools. And
Well, yeah, I think you're exactly right. Yeah, if you have an understanding of evolution now in the modern age, then yeah, how can you not look at God belief as animism? Because we do tend to create our gods based upon our own images, and we are literally created in His image.
Yeah, and it's the image of an animal. Us.
Yeah, good point. Yeah,
The other way around.
that was a mic drop moment, I think, because everybody's quiet now.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to bring that.
Well, I do want to answer real quick. I'm sorry to get over you, Sarge, but I wanted to answer your question specifically about why, like, I personally treat some Christians differently than others. And I honestly think it's about the way Christians approach me. If you approach me with respect, I'm going to give you respect, and we can have an honest conversation. And every Christian in this room, which are being two right now, Demolished Doctrine and Sarge, that I know of, have approached me with respect, and they didn't come at me as a troll like Jill did or Smokey did or all the rest of them. So I give respect where it's due, and I give what I get. So you're not going to come at me with some shit and not get more shit in return. I mean, that's always been my shtick. So I mean, that's why I treat people differently based on how they approach me.
I've said it before. I'll say it again. It's the same deal with you and with Skylar. You show up, you act like you're a human being, you treat the other person like a human being, you're going to get that in return.
Yeah, I mean, Jill's always trolled me from the get. Smokey trolled me from the get. Matt Powell trolled me from the get. So yeah, I mean, if you're going to come at me with disrespect, then I'm old school. I'm not going to take it.
Well, with Smokey, you might as well go in there based on that logic. If he tells you you're filth, you just treat him like filth.
Yeah, well, it's for a person like him. I think it's the only thing he really respects.
It's actually funny you mentioned this because I actually used to be almost universally reviled on the old Google Plus site because when I first came into it, so after I got back from Afghanistan, I was out of work for a little while and I was doing some odd jobs, for cash, just trying to make the money that I'd saved up in the Stan stretch a bit. And while I would be doing a lot of these jobs, I would listen to a lot of YouTube lectures and debates. And that's how I stumbled across William Lane Craig. And I went in like full send on the anti-atheist shtick for a while. And like I was a trollish asshole, like almost probably worse than Smokey. And I realized very quickly that this was not getting me anywhere. I was just annoying everybody around me. And I had actually started through friends of friends and started hanging out in just, off air, laid back, non topical discussions with some actual atheists. And I realized, like, aside from, like I said earlier, a few metaphysical and philosophical differences, we can get along just fine. So I changed my whole tune and became the wonderful, fuzzy, cuddly senior non-commissioned officer that you all know and love to hate today.
Yeah,
Bullshit.
very good. Sure.
Bullshit. It's all a ploy. It's a trap. It's a trap.
Well, and I can see it. I think one of the reasons we started getting along is because we had this, like, Smokey Saint hates both of us, and enemy of my enemy is my friend. So,
Not
but
necessarily.
well, yeah, not necessarily.
P-Mars.
But I mean,
P-Mars is
I
the thing, guys.
was. Yeah. But I was able to, like, appreciate the way you went at Smokey, because you went about it in a very triggering type of way, and he hates you for it. So no, I can see how you could. Yeah, I could
He
see
didn't
it.
actually, he didn't even have to go after Smokey in a triggering sort of way. All he had to do was open his mouth.
Yeah, well, that's pretty much all you have to do.
Sounds of disagreement came from Jim and troll.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it doesn't help that Sarge is a Catholic, so they hate Catholics.
Yeah, Sarge. When Sarge goes into those hangouts, you might as well just have a "kick me" sign taped to his back.
Well, depending on who's there, I mean, yeah, for sure.
Hey,
You
Jack,
saw how it went
can you
when we
mute?
were in that room with Gavin.
Yeah, I can mute my wind coming through.
Yeah, a lot of wind.
Oh wow, it's like a different stream.
I thought that was the air running through my brain-addled pickle.
No, it's me sitting in my drafty guard shack.
So I kind of want to backtrack for a second here. Going back to the Discord stream chat, Nicola posted a question. Would the being from Skyrim lore, Sithsis, be a god by the definition presented earlier? I believe that's referring back to Serb's definition. Sithsis is a chaotic being whose nature brought all of reality into existence. It is a supreme creator who is not material, is indivisible, and ontologically simple. It is worshipped by many, has a prophet to speak on its behalf, and has made a compact with individuals over many years.
Hail Sithis.
So that was quick. Like,
well, I will say this. Like, there's a small part of me that wishes I had perhaps been born into an older, more, I guess, metal religion, something like the Slanesh cult from Warhammer 40K.
okay.
Blood for the blood god.
Yes, although I would probably end up being a noise marine because the silence offends Slanesh.
Oh, I hate to admit it. I would probably be Chaos Marine.
You guys,
Actually, if we're going to be completely honest,
just hit like a 10.
I would 10 out of 10 be an orc.
I would be with you, but they don't have women.
The green-skinned boys is the best boys.
And taking this back to reality, would you guys have been up for like an ancient Canaanite snake cult?
You're really on that snake cult thing today, aren't you?
I'm all about that. Yeah. It's Jill's fault. Jill triggered it in me. I'm like, wait a minute, that's right. The Nahushtash or whatever that thing's called, the snake staff. Yeah.
Oh, the bronze serpent thing.
Yeah, I'm gonna be asking Dr. Josh about that one.
You know what we need? You know what we should do? Just as a complete aside, we need to convince him that all references to the Gadsden flag and the Union Jack are a reference back to ancient Canaanite snake cults, and see what that does to his right-wing brain.
That is so funny and wrong.
If you yield to the flag, that's an act of idol worship. Welcome to the snake cult, Jill.
Wow.
I
You guys
honestly,
are way too bright and way too bored.
I honestly believe that Joe was drunk this morning.
Oh my god,
he was sloshy.
It's hard to tell.
When was that? Did you have a conversation with him this morning, or was it comments that he was making?
Oh, conversation. It was on Ginger Nation. He wanted to talk about butt play. Yeah, he was off his normal rocker this morning. It was a cray Jill, like a really crazy Jill.
Did he ever use the phrase "the science of the anal cavity"?
Well,
Yes.
Okay. That's part of the course then. So that's that. I mean, that's just normal.
I'm just saying, if you guys haven't seen it, you got to go see it because Dragnot's there, and Dragnot confronts him. Well, Sarge knows the story better than I do, but he had to face a confrontation with Dragnot, and it wasn't pretty.
It's a wonderful story.
It's always fun.
I will be watching that. Well, probably after Rage gets done with his video.
So we're hitting the 8 o'clock mark, and I want to give a little bit of downtime so that we can transition between streams tonight. But in closing, the big question I want to end with is, do you think, and we'll go one down the line, or each one down the line and answer this question, but do you think that theism and atheism can happily coexist? And why or why not? And we'll start with Richard.
No chance at all. And why or why not? Because everyone has a stance, and they really believe in the stance that they have, and they're not willing to bend on it. And until heaven arrives and we know the actual truth, we're going to keep having these fights.
Okay.
Get him, Jay.
Yep, Jay, what do you think?
Yeah, okay. Different order from what I was looking at. Anyway, yeah, I think they can do it. It depends on how we define theism. So if a person believes in God or gods, and then you have another person who believes gods to not exist, depending on how they define atheism and how they hold to it and all that. Yeah, I think it's fine. I think what happens is to me, it's no different than if somebody believes something to be the case and another person believes something to not be the case. What normally causes the conflict is the things that go along with just believing in this particular God, the worship aspect of it, following this particular deity's teaching, what one ought to do and might not to do, and all that. So it's a complicated issue, but I think at the core of it all, if you can get past that, I mean, my brother and I was a theist. My brother and my little sister were atheists much longer, for much longer before I converted, for lack of a better word, and we still got along fine.
Cut yourself. Oh, sorry, I thought I was muted.
It's all good.
That's it. I'm done.
How about you, Jeff?
I mean, I don't think there's any way to split the two. I think you always have two sides of that particular debate, and I think, like I said, I think what ends up becoming kind of contentious is like to me, theism ends up becoming like this like perpetual game. Like if you trace it back throughout all of human society, the way it's been worked out by different groups, if you take humanity as a whole, religion is Calvin ball. If any of you remember that, it's just this game with constantly changing rules, oftentimes on the fly, and some of those rules would include its antithesis. So I think that the fact that we're still here, we still have societies, we still function as an example of, yes, theism and atheism can coincide. I think the real trick is whether or not there's definitely a case to be made where I think there are certain, like I said, I think certain religious ideas, certain deities, and certain doctrines and dogmas are self-eradicating. They're just not going to stand the test of time. But I don't think the basic idea of is there a God or there isn't one or anything like that, that those questions aren't going to go anywhere. And as humans, we have a responsibility to live with that.
Okay.
All right. This was a question I was interested in for about a year. Had several conversations with Christians I like, Christians I didn't like. Ultimately, I came to the conclusion that there's no way in hell we can coexist. There's no way in hell atheists can coexist with just atheists. We're such a plethora of right, left, different ideologies. We'd be at each other's throats. So until you had some foundation of what an atheist is, say if my faction of atheism were to win out and we all became secular humanists, then there's a possibility, because secular humanists find merit in all human beings. So as long as there's reformation on the Christian or religious theist side of that, then sure. But it would have to be great reformation. Then you look at the theist side of that, and theists can't even survive in coexistence. Christianity and Islam is at its throat. Islam and Judaism has been in wars for how long? They want to all eradicate each other. So no, I think ultimately until humanity figures out how to live with itself, we're going to be at each other's throat over anything.
Makes sense.
What about you, Red Fang?
I don't think we can fully coexist. We can coexist person by person, but as Christian or as religions and atheism, we'll never fully get along. We're always going to be there fighting each other over politics and stuff like that.
Cool.
Well, there's also another example that I forgot to bring up was the military. You have all sorts of people of different belief systems, but when they all get unified under that system of that job of what it is to be in the military, you learn to separate your personal beliefs to working towards the goal, and the goal obviously of the military is to obviously defend, ultimately defend the country, defend the people, defend the rights and the way of life of a particular country. So that's
Right.
another example that people can use, that where atheists and theists and deists and pagans can, even Satanists, you can have that put on your dog tags. They can all come together and all exist and accomplish missions and do great things. But they have to learn to set aside those personal beliefs and stick to the core of what it is to be a soldier and to serve their country.
I think if it would take like aliens coming down and invading us for us
Yeah.
all to truly
That
come
wouldn't work.
together.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That's what I've been saying.
Well, okay. Well, if aliens did come, okay, we unite, we fight them. Okay, then then afterwards we're right back where we started. Like an example I could use is Star Trek. Like the Bajorans get together and fought the Cardassians, and then look at that, after they left, all civil wars started again. So that would be
Wow.
nice to know.
Oh,
That's
for
not really.
fuck's sake! You just weaseled in Star Trek. God damn it!
Yeah.
Come on, it's not even good sci-fi.
Yes, it is. Fuck you.
I'll get back on topic and ignore that Midnight brought up Star Trek.
Well, hold on. The point is poignant. Okay, it's relevant. Fuck off.
No, it's not.
Yes, it is.
I think once atheists start to understand that the difference between themselves and pantheism is just semantics, and once theists understand that it's not a global question and that are actually atheists to many things, I think there'll be enough empathy between the two that they can figure out how to get along. I also think once they understand that half the population has to be below 100 IQ in order for 100 to be the average, that will make a big difference. I also think as life expectancy goes up, people are more likely to become agnostic overall. That will also solve the problem. I think there's hope. Yes.
Well, I'll bring up the rear. First and foremost, well, I guess I as a libertarian, I 100% believe in and advocate for the peaceful coexistence of a diverse group of people. I do believe it is possible for differing ideologies to coexist, and I know Jefferson's probably gritting his teeth as I say this.
Wait, why'd you call me out?
Only because I know we've had these
No
conversations before.
Seems like it's a big L word. Yeah, you probably heard my eyebrow go up. What?
But to kind of touch on what Jay was saying with the military, I think that, and then again, like kind of what Midnight was saying, is I think that sectarian differences or differences in philosophies, theologies, tend to recede or fall to the rear when there's a common framework within which people can exist. So
Thank you.
if we take like the invasion by aliens example, or you look at like the expanding frontier of the United States as probably a more recent example in history. a lot of the differences between American religions, yes, there were some, in the intelligentsia, there was definitely heated discussion. But, out there on the Great Plains while they're building the railroad and expanding into Indian territories, a lot of the times when you've got some very rightfully pissed off Sioux tribes or Cheyenne with a bunch of encroaching farmers and railroads sitting there, like you don't necessarily care if the guy next to you is Baptist, Catholic, Methodist, Wesleyan, or whomever. You're going to form that line and you're going to defend your homestead. Um, and you don't even care if he's a godless heathen who is still passed out on Sunday instead of in church. So if you have a common framework within which everybody operates, I believe that these differences kind of fall to the wayside, it, because there's a unifying factor driving everybody towards the same goal. Does that make sense?
Amen.
And a good example of that, watch the movie Pacific Rim, where all of humanity gets together to fight the kaiju.
I was actually
Yeah.
drawing more on the Netflix.
No Star Trek.
I was
No
actually
Star Trek.
referring more to the Netflix and AMC series Hell on Wheels,
Yeah.
where they
Well,
found their
right.
differences in race, religion, and politics all falling by the wayside as they're fighting against the Cheyenne and the Sioux and the other railroad. They all just said, you know what, to hell with it. We got to just build this goddamn railroad.
Well, I think to Red Fang's point, you need that alien invasion that's going to unite the world. If you just look at the country right now, we're politically divided, but we're divided amongst fundamentalist Protestants and the rest of America. And the fundamentalist Protestants are quite cool with fascism, with Putin's Russia. They're quite cool with QAnon, so I mean, we would need something very, very drastic to bring everybody together and to be able to get along.
I'm sorry, but the Russian Orthodox Church is based in red pilled. In certain circles of the U.S. military, there's kind of like this strange fixation on Russia and Putin. It's kind of like that, like the Slav tube, where there's a couple of YouTube channels ironically devoted to all things Slav. It's kind of like that sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I had to
I
get
think
that in there.
I think it's kind of interesting bringing up the idea of like humanity, or at least just a country having one kind of unifying thing would be sort of like the Enlightenment values are sort of the arguments that were made by the founding fathers. The initial one being like the best way to make an argument for America being able to govern itself was that we believe that all people are all men are created equal, right, and endowed equally by their creator. Great way to argue against the divine right of kings. Gets a little tricky when you start inserting something like government deriving its authority from the consent of the governed, because once people accept that as an effective and democratic concept for government, you could start applying that to how they feel about God, and it doesn't work so well, especially for like the Christian God. So just an aside.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, I know I was super interested in coexistence, and I really wanted it to be true. And I'm gonna think about some of the arguments I heard here. I think Cerberus made a really good argument, and I'll come back and listen to it because I want to reconsider, because I came to the conclusion. I just think no way in hell. I mean, you can have pockets, like I can like Richard and I can like Sarge, I can like Justin Koo. But then you got the Smoky Saints of the world,
Right.
And there's a difference.
But to translate,
I think
but
we
to be
can coexist.
disingenuous,
Can we thrive? I think that's another part of the question. Can we coexist? I think humans have demonstrated we can coexist. In what ways is that coexistence of, like, when there's struggle? How much is that holding us back? So we could ask the question: can we thrive?
and to steel man what Serb was saying earlier, that probably not fairly. Anybody who basically learns to just get along with Serb, everybody can get along with anyone.
It's not
true.
completely invalid.
Hold on, Jay. Are you sure about that? Because I get along with Serb, and and there's a few people I don't get along with, so it doesn't apply to everybody.
You're
Yeah,
young yet.
'cause I got issues with Gavin and Smokey and the rest of the fun bunch over there.
I wasn't
I
even talking
honestly
about
don't.
them specifically, but yes.
Yeah, but there's a difference. So, like Red Fang, I think you get along with them; they don't get along with you.
That's true. I think though, like when you talk about YouTubers, some of the more unlikable YouTubers out there, or even not even like necessarily YouTubers, but discussion frequenters or panelists, um, I think they represent a pretty small subsection. In all honesty,
Mm.
I think.
Oh yeah,
In,
I don't even. I'm not even sure if these are like real Christians. Like I
yeah.
don't know. I think they're streaming when they should be in church.
In honesty, like in my experience, most people that I've known throughout my various flavors of Christianity are of the opinion that yes, church and religion is something important in my life, and it does kind of influence my decisions. But at the end of the day, right, I wake up, I go to work, I come home, I spend some time with the family, I watch my sports ball or my shows, and I try to be as decent a person as I can with everyone around me. And I think when you run into negative examples of Christians, especially here on the YouTube, it's more a reflection of bad personalities, cognitive and personality disorders, than it is of their particular beliefs. And I'll just leave that mic drop where it is.
I'm going to pretend that didn't apply to me.
Yeah, pretend like it doesn't apply to me too.
Okay, cool.
Well, that being said, I want to thank everybody for participating in the discussion. I had a much better turnout than I thought I would. I am pleased that my featured panelists, Jefferson, Richard, and the Rage, all made it with minimal technical difficulties. I want to thank Midnight, Serb, Red Fang, and Jay for chiming in on the conversation. Gentlemen, do you have any parting shots or plugs you want to give your own channel?
Yeah, of course.
Always. Come check me out. We'll be starting in about 40 minutes. And yeah, come in, conversate, bring a topic, challenge me on why I'm a dickhead, atheist, all of that good stuff.
And if you hate him really bad, go ahead and subscribe.
Yeah, I could always use some more subscribers.
I'm going to use some of that reverse marketing that Jill does. Don't subscribe, people. I don't want to get flagged by the YouTube guys. Kick me off here. Tell me
No one's falling for that.
Yeah, and if anybody's watching, I just dropped a link to Knox stream in the live chat.
Oh, cool.
So
yeah, thank you.
I'll also dump it into the YouTube stream. There we go. There's the thumbnail and everything. So hopefully that looks all nice and shiny. Jay, you want to give yourself a quick plug? Parting thoughts?
No, wind.
His name is Jay, and he hates Star Trek. How about Jess?
Yeah.
What's that? Oh yeah, come check my channel out. I got,
great.
I got the funny name, so yeah, come check it out. I say weird things, and sometimes I make good points. Oftentimes I fall asleep.
And you might get lucky, and both the Cuck brothers will be there.
Yeah.
The Cuck brothers. That one and the Antifa twins. That one. Those two nicknames have been great.
They haven't.
Awesome.
I relish any variations on the word spatchcock that people can come up with because it's already a ridiculous word. So
it is.
Keep them coming.
Hey, Richard, you're sitting down with Skylar Fiction in not too long, right?
Yes, sir. Well, actually, we just did that.
Oh, you just did. Did I miss it?
Yep.
Was that the night before last?
Well, you probably saw an alert where it's going as a mirror on my channel.
Oh,
it's probably what you saw.
It's a premiere. Okay,
Yes,
I got you.
sorry.
Okay, cool.
Not live. I will be there to answer objections, though.
Yeah, no, I'm not subbed to Skylar, so I missed the live discussion. But I just saw it coming up on yours. So, Well, cool. If you
Yeah,
didn't,
that's airing tomorrow, and I'll sit beside there and talk to people while they're watching it if anybody shows up. Oh, speaking of which, at this rate of expansion, this explosion I'm having in subscribers, by the time I'm 500 years old, I'll be monetized.
Yes,
So everybody knows
that's
that. So
fair.
I'm not showing off. I'm just saying.
You're expanding at twice the rate I am. So
you guys are expanding a lot faster than I am. I just do this for my own personal amusement, though. How about you?
Uh,
Nobody likes a whiny Catholic, Jim.
No,
I'm just
nobody
an
likes it.
asshole. I'm an asshole every day, and I get 2 or 3 subs.
Right on.
How about Red Fang? Do you want to plug anything, man?
I got nothing to plug. I just come hang out and bug other people's channels.
Look up
and
Praise
what?
I Am That I Am, and then as soon as you see Red Fang's icon pop up in the room, hit your stopwatch and see how long it takes him. He's trying to beat his record.
Right.
Red Fang is my Tonto. As far as Gavin and Praise are concerned, I send him in. He gets beat on, kicked by Gavin, irritates the shit out of him, and then I go in real quick, and I got about 2 seconds to say and then I'm booted.
Red Fang has the unique distinction of angering a New Zealand person and challenging him to a fight, and actually trying to arrange international travel for the pleasure of doing it. So
Right on.
I salute
Yeah.
you, Red Fang.
Yeah,
I can't wait for that fight.
that may or may not be how certain salacious information escaped onto the internet.
Who knows? I
But
mean,
we're
we'll
not
never
talking
know.
about that.
Yeah, no
And
need to bring that up.
last
Just know,
but not
like
least,
when Gavin calls all of you beta, you can't be beta because I, by definition, by Gavin's own definition, am the only beta male. I am the definition of it. So if he calls you a beta or a beta, as he pronounces it, you tell him by his own definition he's wrong.
there we
Oh
go.
wow! Only a beta would call another man a beta.
Well, I'm the definition of beta to Gavin. Yeah.
And last but not least, Serb.
Oh, well, I don't really do my own stuff, although I'm been rolling around in my head the possibility of doing so recently. So I guess the only thing I have to plug is agnosticism. Come try it. We have cookies.
Are you sure?
Hey, why don't you go to Steve McRae? Go to Steve McRae's channel and troll that shit.
But is there punch and pie?
No, there isn't.
No,
No,
that's
there's killer Kool-Aid though.
Yeah, the punch is too close to Kool-Aid. We avoid the whole entire possible Kool-Aid joke.
I mean, I could stand for some rum. But okay, well, hey, thanks a lot, guys. I really appreciate y'all coming out for this. For my viewers who have been slowly tapering off on this live stream, well, thank you for watching and then eventually joining the chat and then stopping your viewership. For those of you who will watch this afterwards, thanks for watching. I'm glad you made it this far. Please hit that thumbs up button and sub if you like this kind of thing. I try to put something out there once or twice a month. I am a busy man with a big family, so I tend to get the stink eye when I spend a lot of time staring at my computer. So that being said, like I say, I appreciate all of you, both my viewers and my panelists. Everybody, y'all have a better one, and Sarge out. And we are